Hello, this video is for my fifth grade students who are working on their state flower. We're going to be creating our own state flower with sort of a printmaking technique, and then we're going to be adding oil pastels. So each one of you has chosen a different state. This one is North Dakota, and it's the wild prairie rose. And this is the one I'm going to use for the demo. So since we don't have much time together, we meet once a week for 45 minutes. I'm going to give you some strategies to go quickly with this so that we can finish up our pastel drawing and get it ready for the exhibit that's coming up soon. So we did some little exercises with our oil pastels, and we're just using this set of 12. So there's some colors that we need that aren't in here. So we want to learn how to blend the colors together to get, different values, but also to mix colors so that we can get, lavender and purples, which aren't in here at all. So we'll be mixing some colors to get those lighter pastels as well. Okay, so for everybody, we've all practiced blending so that we can gradually go from one color to the other color without creating big blocks and color blocks and harsh lines. We want to try to figure out how to get these colors to blend together because we'll need that sometimes when we're transitioning from, a light to a dark. And then other times we're going to need a really big break, like between this green and white that we can see here on the label. There's a really strong line that divides those two values and colors. So, but then other times we're going to need to go gradually. So another thing I want you to pay attention to is that sometimes the color is very dark and sometimes it's very light. So we'll be adding white to help those values to become lighter. And sometimes we'll use yellow to do that. And then to just keep in mind that oil pastels are very they're a little sticky, and you'll get these little crumbs that can be kind of messy. So you'll want to have a little paper towel nearby and possibly an extra sheet of paper to just wipe your pastel off. I like just doing it on the side of my paper, or you can use a paper towel. So some of you did the sort of, all the colors in the color wheel. You practiced doing a gradient with those colors. But one of the classes we didn't get to it, but in our second classroom, we did do the pastel colors, the tints of these colors of the spectrum. So we're going to do this one here as well, just so you can see, for those of you that didn't get to do it, you can see how we practice that. So all we did was we added a column of white pastel here. And again, you want to check to see that there's no other colors on here when you want to get pure white. Sometimes the colors will stick to your pastel, and then you'll end up, like right here, there was a little spot of blue, a little crumb of blue, and so it will be picked up in your artwork. Okay, so after you get the white here, you can lightly add some red over top of it. And you can see it's lighter, but it's still not super light. So I'm just going to add it a little bit lighter here and then go over it again with the white. And now you can see adding the white again on top of it. So that red is sort of sandwiched in between the white. And you can see that it does look pink. And then you can do that with each color. And it's really important to do this first before you start on your flower, so that you know what to expect when you're using the different colors. So here you can see that we have some of the red. I don't know, I hope you can see it. We have some of the red and sort of pink hue stuck to our pastel. So this is where you can, use a paper towel or just the side of a practice paper to kind of wipe those other colors off. Sometimes you can just leave it on there because you're trying to maybe blend orange and pink together or orange and red together. But we don't want any unwanted colors in our artwork. Sometimes it works though. Okay, and see here you can see that the orange is kind of a peach. Now we're going to go to yellow. At some point too, you're going to need to peel some of the wrapper off. So with my yellow, I've already gotten to that point. So just peel off a little bit. The wrapper does help to keep the pastel from breaking. So just take off a little bit so it doesn't get in your way when you're coloring. Okay, so with the yellow, it's already white. It's not white. It's already light. So yellow is just naturally a lighter hue, a lighter value. But we can go ahead and make it even lighter because there are some flowers that will be yellow and they'll have lighter areas and more saturated areas. Okay, and then in our box of pastels, you do have a light green and then like a more true secondary green. The lighter green is a yellow green, which is a tertiary color. So we're going to go ahead and put this one in between the yellow and secondary green. I'm going to go ahead and put them both together before I add the white. But again, I'm not going to press hard because I'm trying to have a lighter value. So some people like to blend pastels with their finger. I don't I don't have a lot of success with that. I don't like doing that. I know a lot of you didn't like getting the pastels on your fingers because it is kind of sticky and it just makes things messy. So I like to blend with another color over top by layering. And when you're making light tints, you can just use a lighter color like the white or the yellow to do the blending for you. And it looks really creamy. You just got to make sure to check and get off any unwanted color before you go to the next one. Take that off just by wiping it on your paper or your paper towel. Okay, and I am going to need to peel off a little bit of this paper here around the white. Try not to take off any of the pastel. And if you can just keep a little spot on your desk where you're putting the crumbs and any paper that you're peeling off, and make sure to put that in the garbage can when you're finished and not on the floor, because you can imagine these little gooey crumbs are not easy to get out of the carpet. Okay, so let's move on to blue. And in our box we have a light blue and a regular just primary blue. And again, I'm going over top of the white that I already put there. Since these are both blue, I'll do them together. Okay, and then I'm going to go over it with white, starting with the lighter color, blue, and then gradually going over the darker blue. And you can see how the white is blending in this darker color pastel. It's sort of blending it in with the white that's underneath and the white on top. almost like paint. It's almost like oil paint. It's just blending all that together and making it really creamy. And it is kind of thick on there. If you were to take your thumbnail and scrape it, you would see that you could get some of that color up and scrape it off of there, almost like it's like frosting or something. Okay, so now to get to make lavender or purple, it's kind of tricky. Like we made some purple here, but it wasn't that easy to do. And I have found that if I go ahead and put light blue down first, and actually it's second in this case because it has white first and then light blue, and then add a little bit of red because it doesn't give us pink. You know, I haven't tried this yet, but I'm going to try a little bit of this light peach because the peach is almost like a white and a pink, a warm pink mixed together. I'm going to try that. I'm not sure how that will work out, but I'm going to try. Okay. And let's put a tiny bit of red. The red is very dark, so we have to be careful not to add too much red. Okay, I'm putting that over, and again, I'm trying to get to lavender. Okay, so now that I've added a little bit of light blue, some white, I tried a little bit of that peach to give it a little bit of light red. And I have some blue on my white, but I'm going to go ahead and just keep that on there and mix it all in and see if I can get lavender. Okay, so some of this, the reason we're doing this is to experiment before we start our artwork to see what we can figure out with this set of pastels. Now, every set of pastels is going to be slightly different. You know, every brand is going to be, we're all using the same brand here, but if you do use a different brand, you may have different results with the same colors or close to the same colors. So you just always want to try it out before you start on the piece that you want to be your finished piece. Okay, this is pretty close to lavender. We can maybe get it a little bit more purpley. It's kind of a bluish lavender, but let's try a little more red and then go over it again with white. And I'm pretty happy with that. I think that looks pretty lavendery. Okay, so that's going to work. So here we have our tints. Tints are what we call, when we add color, add white to a hue. When we add white to a color, it gets light. In pop culture, we call it pastel colors. And we will be using these quite a bit with our state flower art. Okay, so back to the flower itself. This was just kind of a really quick, I wasn't really referencing anything, but just a quick idea about stems and flower petals and how we are going to be layering colors. But in this case, we're going to use, I'm going to be showing you how to, let me go ahead and make this a little bit lighter, or not, a little easier to see. There we go. So I'm going to be doing the North Dakota Wild Prairie Rose. So here's how we're going to accomplish that. We're going to use a printmaking technique that is commonly known as tracing. So I went ahead and printed out just a black and white version of this flower, and we're going to put it over our drawing paper, which is not white. It's like a kind of a yellowish tan color, and it has a little bit of a texture to it. And we want to transfer just the outline of this because we don't have a lot of time to go over how to draw this in proportion and make a grid and all of that. So we're just going to use a printmaking technique that's basically just tracing it onto our drawing paper. All right, so you can see some of the edges are not that hard, not that easy to see, but if we can just get down the basic shape, we can color it in, almost like a coloring book, and then we can add highlights and shadows as well. So how are we going to trace this onto our drawing paper? Well, one way to do that is, since we don't have carbon paper, and most people don't have carbon paper just laying around, you can use just a regular pencil, or even better, a soft drawing pencil. This one is 2B, and it's a little softer than a regular drawing pencil, but you can, or just a regular pencil that you write with, like a number 2 pencil. So you want it to be pretty sharp, not because you need the point, but because you're going to need one of these long, sort of this long side of the pencil, not the point, but this side. We're going to lay the pencil almost flat, not all the way flat, but tilt it up just a little so that we're engaging that long side of the pencil lead. And then we're just going to go over all the areas that we're going to trace. And this will kind of work like carbon paper to transfer as we trace the image. So I can kind of see, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but if I lift it up, you can see the areas that we're going to draw on. You don't need to do this on white areas where there's no image, okay? We just want to get the areas where we're going to need to trace. Okay, and so as we're tracing, any areas that don't have this pencil on the back, once we press down, and start drawing over top of the image, it's not going to transfer anything if there's nothing back there. So we need to make sure to put a little bit of this pencil lead. And you can see this goes a lot faster than if you were using the point of the pencil and doing this. You can see that's not covering much area. So by using this side, we can really cover a big area pretty quickly. And you'll be able to see through the paper enough to see where you want to draw, or where you want to put that pencil lead. Now, you might not know this, but this medium inside of a pencil is not lead. They used to use lead, but when they found out that lead was toxic and people can be poisoned with lead, they stopped putting it into pencils. And so now, what is this stuff? It's graphite. Graphite is also great for drawing. I'm just going a little darker on those areas that I need. And it's not toxic. We're able to erase it. But for some reason, we still call it lead, even though it's not lead. It's graphite. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm just going over a little bit more some of the areas that I want to make sure I get a good transfer. All right, so I think I've got everything pretty much covered. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and turn this over. It's a good idea to think about your whole paper. You can't see the whole paper here because my camera is not quite big enough. But you want to position it as though the paper isn't there, like as though the white paper is not there. And you want to think about, where do I want this flower to sit on my final drawing? So try to ignore the edge of the white paper and just look at the edge of your drawing paper. Where do you want this to be? Do you want it to be a little lower down? Okay, and you probably want it centered, and you don't want any of it going off of the edge. But once you have a good placement and you can see where you want it, it's a good idea to put a little tape so it's not moving around while you're tracing. So I'll bring some of this to class, but masking tape is good because we're able to peel this off of our paper once we're done without ripping the paper. Okay, so I'm just putting a little bit of it in the corner, and you really just need 2 corners, and you want to go on opposite sides. If you feel like you need all 4 corners, you can do that too. You can also just tape this right down to your desk if you want. I have to move it around a little bit so that you can see everything on the paper, but so you can see everything on the camera since my camera is not big enough. But you can probably just leave it taped onto your desk, and that way it won't move around. Okay. All right, now that I have it positioned where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and just quickly go over all these areas. And you want to push down a little bit hard, not so hard that you break your pencil lead, your pencil graphite. And you want to go around the shapes, especially the darkest shapes. So the darkest shapes are really going to anchor our image and help us to see where things are located. Some of them are so light you can't really see. You can kind of put them in, but we'll figure it out because we'll be looking at the color reference. We'll have a reference image on our computer that we can look at while we're putting in our oil pastels. But we just want to basically get kind of a map of where things are located on our paper so we can draw our state flower. And we're really tracing it. We're really kind of like printing it. And some people might say, oh, you're cheating, you're not drawing it. Well, you know what? Printmaking is a form of art, and tracing is a form of printmaking. So it is not cheating. It is just using a technique to help us get our image outlined so we can use our oil pastels. And we're really focusing on color and value in this project, as well as just learning about the flowers for the state that we're researching for our social studies state project. And in a later lesson, we'll learn more about how to draw proportions and how to make sure we get everything to scale. But that's not what we're really focusing on with this lesson. So it's not, just keep that in mind. We're not cheating, we're just using a technique to help us with this project, a printmaking technique. Okay, so I've outlined this. If you have only taped down 2 corners, you'll be able to lift up and see. And here you can see that there is a very light print of your flower. And we'll be able to color it in like almost like a coloring book, okay? Okay, so we don't want to take too long. It doesn't have to be perfect. You do want to go around areas that are darker, because that's going to help you to see where to add shadows and where to add highlights. If there's areas that are missing, just don't do those areas. We'll figure it out. But you'll have enough information that you'll be able to go ahead and finish your flower pastel artwork. Okay. And you don't have to, if you see like a little shadow, you don't know what it is, it's okay. Just go around it. You don't have to know exactly what everything is. You just want to go around any shape that you see. What's really cool about this too is if you were to trace around something that you didn't want to be there, like maybe it was just a smudge on your paper that you made with your finger, but you traced around it as though it were part of your flower, and then you end up thinking, oh, I didn't want that there. Well, guess what? This is just pencil. You can erase those lines if you don't want them there later. So it's something you can do at home. If there's something like maybe there's something that you wanted to draw, but you weren't really having success at drawing it freehand, this is, if you can print it out, all you have to do is use this technique. Do a sketch on the back with your pencil and then flip it over and trace it onto your drawing paper. And it works very well. Okay, and that just creates a nice outline. Okay, so you don't want to, again, you want to go quickly. You don't have to go around every single little detail. I could, for example, just go around this, maybe put this middle part, this dark part, but maybe I don't go around every little dot that's in here. That's okay, because we want to go quickly so we can get this done in the short amount of time that we have to work together on this. We don't have much time. Okay, so here you can see I actually pressed down a little bit too hard. So I'm going to need to sharpen my pencil. Okay. All right, so in this, like say right here, you could just make one line going here and here, but you can go quickly and put an outline around. If it's a thick line, you want to make it into a shape, not just one line. Go around it. If there's too much detail, you don't need to add all of it. Just try to quickly go around those shapes. And get the map, if you will, of the most pronounced shapes of light and dark. If your paper starts to wrinkle up, like, it starts to, as you're drawing, it's going to start kind of pushing maybe a bubble up into your paper. You want to lift up and flatten it, or else when you lift your paper, it's not going to be, the lines won't match up. So you want to lift up your pencil now and then so everything stays in line. Okay, your tape will help with that, but it still can move a little bit if you're not careful. Okay, so, oh man, this is actually, the wood is pretty weak on this pencil, so it keeps breaking. Okay, so the softer pencils, you can, these are great to use on the back, and then if you want to use like a regular #2 pencil, like the yellow ones we use in school for this part, that would be perfect. But in this case, I don't have my #2 pencil handy, so I'm just going to keep using this one. Okay, so I'm going to move this up a little, and I'm almost done. Okay, some of the flowers that you all have picked are very simple, and some are really complicated. So the complicated ones, just try to get the basic shapes. You don't need to trace every detail. Get the basic shapes and then just look and see, ask yourself, where's the darkest area here? In this leaf, there's lots of different values. That means like light and dark shading. But instead of doing every detail, I'm just going to quickly get the darkest areas and outline that shape. I'm not going to do every little detail, but just the big ones. Oh man, that wood is really weak. Wait, I actually see another pencil I'm going to use. This is a regular number 2 pencil. It should work a little bit better for this part of it. So graphite has a little bit of a silvery texture. It's kind of almost like metallic in a way. So if I go, when you're looking, I'm sure you've seen this before with your own, when you're using pencil, you can kind of see that it has sort of a silvery quality. So even though the printer ink is dark, you can still see the pencil where you drew and where you haven't drawn yet, because the parts that you haven't drawn will not have that silvery quality. Okay, so right here I've put a big shape around the leaf. You can kind of see that. But there's some darker areas that I want to go ahead and draw around that I can do quickly. And that's going to help me when I'm doing my shading. Okay, so I've got everything done except for this little branch and this stem. Everything up here and down here is pretty much done. I'm going to get the shape here. Okay. Right here, I know that the stem continues on up here, but it's highlighted because the light source is coming from this direction. But guess what? If it's not there, you don't need to draw it in. Okay, just put a shape around the shapes that you can see. And then later, like I said before, we'll be looking at the color image on our computers when we put our pastels onto our drawing. And that is going to tell us where to place our lights and darks and different colors. If your line goes a little bit, like right here, I went a little too far over, that's okay. Just leave it and don't try to erase it, because if you press down right there, it's already transferred and it's close enough. It's not going to make a huge difference. Okay. And just going over a few dark shapes. Like drawing maps, which we'll also be learning about in social studies this year with your date reports. We'll also be, your teachers told me you'll be drawing your flag as well. So we'll work on that next semester. Okay, so it seems like I have everything on here. I'm going to lift up, before I take the tape off, I want to lift up and see if I indeed have everything. And it looks like I do. So now I can go ahead and take the tape off. You want to take it off carefully, and you don't want to tear your paper. Okay, and now you can see, ta-da, we have a pretty good drawing and everything is in proportion. And now you're going to have your computer set up and you'll be able to reference your color image and see where to put those colors. So we're not going to be coloring the background. We're just going to leave it this color of our sort of off-white. It's sort of a yellowy color. I don't think it's coming across as yellowy. It's sort of tan. It's not really coming across in this recording very well. You can kind of see it better here. So we're going to start with, let's say, our darker colors. Okay, so we're going to put those down first. We want to get our shadows in there. So I'm going to go with this. I don't want to use black because black is super messy, and even if it looks black, we're going to try to use some other darker values because black can really take the vibrant quality out of our colors. We don't want to mix that into our drawing. So I'm going to start with this brown color because I see that brown in a lot of these tones. Okay, so with my stem here, I'm going to go ahead and use the edge so I have a nice sharp area and just try to fill in this line that I outlined. Now I am going to be bringing some Q-tips. If you want to use a Q-tip to blend the colors a little bit, I just don't like, I just like to blend my pastels with other colors over top. But there might come a time, especially in these really skinny stems, where we might need to use a Q-tip to blend. Okay, some of the areas there's a shadow that's darker than this brown, and what we're going to do is use the dark blue to add, to sort of just knock down that warm brown a little. I'll show you what I mean. So here's the blue. I want to use a sharp edge that doesn't have this white on it. So where's my paper? I'm going to make sure to use a different paper, since this is my artwork. I'm going to use this scratch paper to wipe this white off. So I don't need any white when I'm trying to make it dark. If I had a purple pastel, I'd use the purple, but I don't. Okay, and we could use the edge of this part too, because it's a little sharper. Okay, so right here, I can see that there's a darker, almost black part of the branch. So where I see that, I'm going to go ahead and add the blue over top of this brown. And you can see it gives it a kind of a darker, shadowy sort of look. And a darker tone that looks more like it's in a shadow. Okay, and most shadows will all be on one side of an object because the light source is hitting from this side. We can see on this leaf right here, there's a shadow too. So for all my shadows, I'm going to be adding blue to that color. So I'm going to go ahead and put blue on this leaf as well, where I see shadows. There's a little bit over here on this side too. Okay. So you're just, even though this is green, it's not just green. It's a dark green. So we'll add a little bit of, most shadows are bluish or purplish because usually the light is yellowy orange. white light, but often it has like some warmth to it. So the opposite of the light is going to be a cool tone. Okay, so let's go ahead and blend some of this. I'm going to use the white. See if there's any other colors on here. There's a little blue. I'm going to use the white to kind of blend in. Look how this stem is lighter in the middle and lighter on the right side of the stem. So I'm going to go ahead and it's going to be sort of blending that brown at the same time. I'm trying to stay away from coloring in everything on the right. So I'm just adding a highlight, or everything on the left. I'm trying to add just a highlight to the left side of the branch. And if it's really skinny like this, you're probably going to want to use a sharp edge. Now underneath of the rose, this rose, the head of the flower, it's really dark because the light isn't hitting it. It's in the shadow, but it still looks pretty brown. So I'm going to go back over top of that area, and I'm going to add a little bit of blue just to get it a little more shadowy, and that looks pretty good. Okay, so let's try adding some green to these leaves. We can also see there's a lot of highlights on the leaves that are kind of white. So now we have two greens in here, and you can see that this green, it's more like popsicle green. But green leaves are usually kind of a yellowy green, even yellowy green with a little brown. They're very earthy, organic colors. They're not popsicle colors. So I'm going to use this yellowy green first. And I'm going to put it over top of this blue that I put on there. And then you can see how it gets a little lighter and more yellowy as it goes in toward the center of the leaf. Okay, so I'm layering yellow green over the top of my leaves. So by layering, we can make new colors. And this is true with pastels, with pencils, colored pencils, really any art material that has pigment. You can make new colors by layering. Okay, so once I have that color in there, I can go lightly over the lighter areas. I'm going to go ahead and, this leaf right here is darker. And I'm going to be layering some darker greens and browns over this leaf because it is darker. Okay, and on this one, since it's lighter, I'm going to now add some white to the light areas. I see it has almost more yellow in there too, and so I could layer in some yellow, or I could just leave it like that. Okay, now if you go over it, all of it with white, you can always go back in and layer back in some dark areas as well. Just a few. I'm just going to kind of mute the color with the white. And I think I'll go back over it a little bit with this green. So basically, everything I'm doing is just looking at the color and trying to match it. And it's going to take a few layers because I don't have exactly these colors. Okay, so now I'm going to go with the brown, and you want to just keep looking back and forth. And you're like, well, that's not exactly it, but it's getting closer. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and use this bright kind of grass green, popsicle green. Yeah, it's way too bright, way too bluish green as well. But it does add a little bit of darkness. And we just don't want our flower to look like it came from like the Teletubbies, you know? We don't want fake looking colors. We want it to look like a natural color. Okay, so I think I'm going to add a little more brown over top of that green. There we go. That looks a lot closer. So I just figured out this brown, which is kind of a warm color, mixed with that darker green. It does give me a darker kind of green that I need here. Okay, so if you're not happy with the color that you have, try layering it. If it's still not right, add another color. Okay, so now it's darker, but it's a little too warm. Like it looks like it has orange or something. So I'm going to go back with some blue just to cool it down. And it may not be as dark as this. It's not as black. And like I said, we're not going to use black. If we ever decide to use black, we'll use it right at the end because we don't want black, like oil pastel crumbs getting, all over the place. But let's say I'm closer to the end of this drawing. I'm at the very, very end. If there's some really dark areas that we just couldn't get dark enough, we can go back over it with black. But let's not do that. I'm doing it now just to show you. But we're going to avoid the black until the very end. Okay. And just really lightly here. Okay, and actually I think it would look great even without that. Okay, so hopefully you can see some potential here in, when I say potential, I mean you can see the possibilities of making it look pretty close to your image. And even if it isn't exactly the same, I'm going to try adding some yellow. We should be able to get close enough to make a likeness to our state flower. The lighter colors seem to really work well when we're trying to blend. And I really like how this yellow is working with it. Okay, you're going to see a lot of these little crumbly things, and I would strongly recommend that you do not do this with the side of your hand like we do when we're writing with our pencils. The reason we don't want to do that is probably you could guess that it is going to smear those little crumbs all over the paper. And we can't really erase those. So you don't want to do that. Okay. So what we can do is when we're done, we can lift it up and sort of tap the back of it. So I'll show you real quick. And we don't want to do it onto the floor, but we can kind of, you can see in the back, I'm just going to tap it like this. And in fact, I'll hold it upside down. Some of them are so sticky they won't come off, but some of them will. And then for the rest of them, I'll have a little paintbrush that you can just, I don't have my paintbrush right here, but let me use a piece of tape to show you what I mean. We can get that paintbrush and we can just kind of brush it gently to get those little crumbs off. We just don't want them to make streaks of color on the background of our paper, okay? So we just need to be careful about those little crumbs. All right, so there you can see it's looking pretty good. I am going to just do a little bit more of the flower petal to show you, and then I'll probably stop the recording and then just show you the final piece when I'm finished. But I think everything that you're going to do on the rest of it is basically the same thing that I showed you here. Okay, so here's my white. I think because there's so much white and pink on here, I'm going to start out with white. Okay, I'm going to wipe off some of this green that's on here. And I'm just going to go ahead and color in all these white areas. And even the parts that are pink. Because remember when we did our pastel gradient, we started out with white and we're trying to get to pink. So I think it's a good idea to just cover the whole thing in white. Now I'm not going to do this dark area right here where it's brown. That part is so dark I don't want to put white underneath. So I'll probably just fill that in right now with some brown. This brown is like an orange, it's like almost like a burnt orange color. So it's very warm, meaning that it's on the side, the warm side of the color wheel that is reds, orange, yellow. Okay, and then around the flower petals, it almost looks green, but it's like a dark brownish green, like the dark color of an avocado. But I know that that color is not in my color box. So I'm going to add a little bit of this brown because I know based on my leaves that those are the colors that I'll need. So just where I see that it's dark, I'm going to add just a little bit. Also, once we start with our oil pastels, we're not going to be using our pencil again. That's everything else we're going to do. We're going to be using our pastels. So the key is really to observe and see what color is it that I see. What color do I see right here? How dark is it? How light is it? Okay, and then just try to recreate that look on your artwork. Okay. Okay. There's a little more going on down here, but I think I got most of it that is looking kind of brown. Okay. Over the top of that brown, I'm going to put, let's see, a little bit of yellow and green, and that should give me that kind of old guacamole look, that old guacamole color, that kind of, dark color that we see when avocados have been left out too long. Okay, and it's not blended yet, so it's still looking like not quite the right color yet, but we're getting there. Now right here, it's brownish, but it's more on the red side, so I'm not going to put green there, but I'm going to put some here. Okay, I think that about covers it. This leaf is definitely got green. Now you might wonder, Now, what if I put the green first and then the brown? Yeah, you can do that. You can keep going back and forth with it. Just try to keep the tone right. Like where it's dark, keep it dark. Where it's light, keep it light. But it almost doesn't matter too much which one you put down first or second. Okay, so I'll go back over with my brown here because I don't want popsicle green leaves. I want this more avocado green. Okay, and then I'm adding in my yellow green. And remember, the lighter colors are great for blending. So now I'm kind of blending this green and brown together. And I'm constantly looking back and forth at my photo that has the color. Okay, and now maybe a little yellow over top of that. And I'm just going back and forth, back and forth. Keeping it really dark here. In fact, it's not quite dark enough. I'm going to add a little blue. And maybe at the end I'll go back in and add, I might go back in and add a little black at the end, but I don't know, maybe not. I kind of like that, just like that. Okay, so over these areas around the flower petals where it's kind of green, I'm going to go back in with the yellow. The yellow will lighten it up a little and blend these together. I need yellow in here too. So you're always thinking about not just the color, but also the value. And value means how light, how dark is it? And it's those dark areas where the shadows are that really anchor our piece. They kind of outline everything and help us to see where the edges of the shapes are. Sometimes it's the white that shows us the edge of the shape, but only if there's a dark color behind it. So when things are different, like dark and light or warm and cool next to each other, that's what helps us to see the difference when things are different. And that's called contrast. When there's no contrast, you can't see. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to go back with my white. And I'm looking again at my white. It does have some light green on it. So what I can do is look down here. Is there any area of where the white is a little bit not super white? Yes, like this petal down here. So if a little bit of green gets in there, that's okay. All right. Now before I go and put too much more white, well, I could go in and add some pink around the edges. But I could also, oops, that's okay, broke a little bit. If you have a really big crumb of oil pastel, you can just kind of stick it back onto your um, bigger chunk and then just use it and color, like smush it in and color it in um, into your paper. And that way it's not as wasteful of your materials. So try to use those crumbs if you can. Sometimes you just got to get rid of them. Okay, so I'm getting some white in there. And I'm going to go back with my pink or with my red in just a minute, and then I'll go back over it again with my white. And like I said, you could have started out with the red on the edge, but either way, just where it's really dark. Okay, it's pretty dark here. I'm looking there, it's pretty dark, but not too dark, so I don't want to make it, I don't want it to be a dark red, I want it to be pink, so. But some of these darker areas, I'm going to go ahead and use the red, and I'll go over it with pink. And here, because it's really faint, it's kind of hard to see. I can still see it pretty well, but just try to match what you see in the picture as best you can. It might be a little different, that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to go back with my white. I'm checking it for anything on there that I don't want. Use that. And now I'm just going to really go in heavier with the pink. I'm going to go over these red areas. Ooh, that looks nice. And this white will really help us to blend the red. And give us that creamy pink color. Putting the white down first though is really going to help you to keep the lightness. Some of the red might need to be reapplied. Like I said, you're just going to be layering it back and forth until it looks like what you want. Now, when your paper peels off of your pastel, your fingers are going to get gooey. So I'll try to remember to bring in some little wipes so you each have a little wipe to clean your fingers. You don't have to keep getting up to go wash your hands because I know it doesn't feel good to get that sticky stuff on there. But sometimes we just have to get sticky when we're making art. It's a little messy sometimes. So I hope you can kind of see how we're going to do this a little better than maybe you did before. Maybe you can imagine the process for your flower. I have printed out a flower printout for everybody to be able to, based on your selection, the state that you chose. If that flower isn't the one that you wanted, we may not have enough time to get this done before our exhibit if we have to go and print something else out, but you're welcome to do it like at home and or just, not have yours done in time. I mean, there's a chance that that's going to happen for all of us, but I just thought it would be fun to have it ready for our show if possible. But you can always ask your teacher at the office or even your parents to print something out for you, and you can work on it at home. I'll give you the paper, and if you want to take some pastels home, as long as you can bring them back, because oops, I just went over that. Okay, remember you should look at that. I went over it with my thumb. I was able to take off some of that lighter value, and it came right off. So in the very end, we can add in some darker shadows if we need to. Right now I'm adding a little bit of black to this dark brown. It's just the black kind of kills the vibrancy, so we don't want to use it until the very end, and even then use it with caution. I'm going back over it with brown. Sorry about that. Okay, and if it's not exact, it's okay. Just want to try to get it close. Okay, so here is the beginning of my pastel flower, and I think it's turning out pretty good. And I hope that you're excited to start yours. So I will come back with the finished product when it's all the way done.